So very happy to have her on our stage. Please give a very warm welcome to Elena Sinel.
I thought I would just go through the journey I've had, and hopefully that story could inspire some of you on your journeys, or something you could pass on. So I have been a human rights activist since I was 14. I remember I was talking about women's rights to a Scandinavian magazine when I was 14, and the next day the police came to knock on our door, and they spoke to my mom and told her, "Your daughter shouldn't be talking about human rights or women's rights." So since then, I think I have had difficulties returning back to my own country, because probably I'm still on the list of people who speak a lot about human rights. So I have had my degrees in economics and business management back in the country where I came from, Uzbekistan. Then politics and IR at LSE, and then ended up doing conflict security and development as my master's degree in the War Studies department here at King's College London. So it's maybe slightly overstudied, academized. But what happened throughout my career is I ended up working for some great and maybe not great companies like British Council and the UN, which is the place where I got disappointed about when I was in some of the deprived areas in the world, and learned about the corrupt system in the UN, which made me reconsider my career goals and what I wanted to do and how I wanted to make a difference. But I was fortunate enough to have been in many of the countries, and I've lived in the Balkans, in Central Asia, in Africa, in Bangladesh. But my actual journey started in this very small town called Bukhara, Uzbekistan. So this was my wonderland. This is where I was brought up, and I spent a lot of my weekends in this very place, in the museum, where my mom worked for 20 years. And when I was a little girl, 9, 10, and a teenager, I used to wonder what those foreigners were thinking and where they came from and what the world outside of Bukhara looked like. And my mom told me, if you learn how to speak English, it will open up the world to you, and the world will be your oyster. And so from age 9 or 10, I started learning English, and won many Olympiads and competitions. And when I was 17, got noticed by the British Council. So my very first job at the age of 19 was managing a project at the Aral Sea, just outside of Bukhara, 800 kilometers away, trying to help a bunch of women, about 40 of them, make a living, because Aral Sea was suffering from drought, or better to say, the Aral Sea was disappearing completely. And this was as a result of mismanagement of waters on the part of the government, which was at that time Soviet Union. And it took about 60 years for the whole sea to disappear, which caused a lot of job loss, health deterioration, and all of the people that dependent on the Aral Sea have really been starving. There was famine. And so the job of the British Council at that time was, what can we create or recreate? What alternative livelihoods could we create for the people to be able to survive and feed their families? So at the age of 19, I was in charge of this project where women were making things, and my job was to take all of the stuff that they would have made, they were bags and scarves and clothing, go to the capital, Tashkent, and sell it. So I was responsible for the lives of 40 women and their families. And that was me doing that at the age of 19. So afterwards, I had the opportunity to travel, and my traveling included some great places like south of France, where I ended up living for 2 years, and I had my daughter when I was 22. And then ended up traveling to Ethiopia for a couple of years, because I felt south of France wasn't really for me. I couldn't quite find myself in a pretty place like that. And I thought I needed a challenge. I wanted to make an impact. I wanted to change the world. And I convinced my husband, why don't we go somewhere where we could make a difference? And we chose to go to Ethiopia. where we spent a couple of years working on a World Bank project and watching £9 billion disappear in the pockets of the governments. So that was one disappointment I've had. And following that, we also spent another couple of years in the Balkans. That time we were working on the British Council project, and the purpose of that was to, again, it was the time when the Balkans were recovering from the conflict, and the area we were looking at was Kosovo, Macedonia, Albania, and there was a lot of job loss and deprivation. And the challenge again was, how can you revive the area? How can you give people a purpose and an opportunity to make a living? And so we ended up working with a lot of young people from 8 countries in the Balkans, and we connected them through youth entrepreneurship. So by the time we left, we had 8 countries talking to one another, something they could not possibly do at the political level. And that was exciting to me because I was only 23, 24, and it was amazing to be part of a project like this. We came back to England. We came to England for the first time, and again, for me, England was a place where there were no problems. And I thought, what am I going to do in England? I was only 25, 26 at that time, and I thought there was nothing here to do. It was, I think, we were based in Hampshire, and it was the most boring place I've ever seen. This was exciting for me, and England was just a pretty place that didn't have any problems to solve. This is what I thought at that time. So I managed to convince my husband again, let's just go somewhere else. And we ended up going to Chittagong Hill Tracts in Bangladesh. And out of all the places I've been to, this probably was the worst place in terms of human rights abuse. So what I saw there was purposeful sort of extermination of a small population based in a part of Bangladesh, which was very close to India. And so the Bangla government decided that they really wanted that fertile land, and they somehow forgot to tell Chittagong Hill Tract tribes that bamboo flowers every 50 years, and when it flowers, it attracts rats. And when rats come in, they eat all your crops. And guess what? If you're not ready, there will be famine. You're going to die, basically. And they've forgotten to tell this small population. And what happened when we went there in 2008 was there was a lot of famine. There was UNDP. There were World Food Programs running around trying to save the people, but nobody was doing anything about the government. The defeat and the foreign aid was still supporting the government that was exterminating, and nobody in the world knew that these people, the villages were burnt and women were raped, and nothing was done to that. So I think this is when my thinking in terms of should I be working in international development, this is when I decided maybe not. Maybe the world of international development was too corrupt for me to get involved in. And when we came to England, I started reflecting upon what I will do. And again, I thought there were no problems to solve, but then I realized the problem was staring into my face, and it was my daughter, who was at that time already 11, 12, so she started secondary school. And I realized she was learning, coming back home every day, learning to pass an exam, which is pretty much what I was doing when I was a teenager. And I thought, I was told that England has the best educational system, and that's why I'm here with my daughter. And I couldn't really see joy anymore. So primary school was fun. There was a lot of project-based learning, and then suddenly secondary school, it turned into an exam factory. And she was coming home every day telling me, I have these GCSEs in 3 years, and I have to pick my subjects, and I have to learn how to do X, Y, and Z. And I started taking my daughter to hackathons. I decided I'm going to show you a different kind of world. I'm going to show you what people do, how we get together to solve real problems. Started taking her to hackathons and realized that she was learning much better from other people. And this really kick-started my journey in trying to address the educational deficiencies in this country. And then I realized that the problem that I was trying to address in this country was actually faced by many other countries as well. And somehow people started listening to me. I mean, it's very, very difficult to work in this country, particularly when you want to try and make a difference in the school curriculum or in education. But I was just fortunate that people have started listening and thinking that what I was saying made a lot of sense to some, I hope. And so the problem I'm really concerned about is that there will be a lot of young people that will be starting work in the next decade, and a lot of the jobs that they will have to face have not even been invented yet, because the world is changing so fast and the education is struggling to keep up. And so there is a real issue, and all of the companies that are based in here, as you know, they are in many accelerators, they would face exactly the same problem, and that's talent. Okay, so by 2020 we need over 1 million now, you know, job professionals who have experience in science, engineering, and tech. This is something Royal Society states, and we definitely are not going to meet those numbers, unfortunately. The top 10 skills, according to World Economic Forum, are complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity. And again, this is really not something this educational system is able to provide, because the system is still very much traditional and hasn't changed in over 200 years. And the job landscape looks a bit like this. We'll probably, many of the audience would probably have some experience in the top 3 or top 5 jobs in here. And again, it's not something that is ever even discussed in schools. A lot of the kids that come out of school will never even hear about jobs like data scientist or design thinker or, you know, machine learning expert or whatnot. So this is, career advice is appalling, and or, you know, some schools do it better than others, but it's definitely not consistent. And so 100% of net jobs will be created, have been created in Europe by companies less than 5 years old, and the trend is ongoing. And what the question usually that we ask is, you know, what will you do when you grow up? Is not something that we can ask in the context as it is, when 40% of the jobs that they will aspire to have not even been created, and 100% of the net jobs are created by the companies that are less than 5 years old. In fact, when I work with kids, it's really not the question I would ever ask my child or any of the children I work with. The question I ask, and I think this is the right question to ask, is how are you going to change the world? That is the right question, because that brings up a lot of very interesting conversations. So that set me on a mission to really inspire young people, and the way I do this, interestingly, is through AI. But AI has come to me in a very accidental way. So the way this happened, I set up Acorn Aspirations 4 years ago, and to begin with, we were playing with lots of different technologies, VR, AR, you name it, developing apps and whatnot. But one day I was approached by a teenager who was suicidal. He was trying to commit suicide 6 times, and he came to me asking me, Elena, can you please engage my mind? And this was the mind I have not encountered before. It was a genius boy who was only 15 at that time, 15, 16, and he could develop stuff that, I mean, right now he already mortgaged his flat at the age of 18, okay? So that gives you, he's really in demand. And he's at Imperial and has spoken at every single large machine learning conference. So you're talking the level, you know, the kind of mind that probably doesn't maybe happen that often. But that mind was suffering at that time. Something was happening at school, and something was triggering depression, and he was very suicidal. And I didn't know what to do, because we are not really developing any technology. All we do is we work with kids, we inspire them to change the world, we show them how technology works, and they just carry on, go ahead and do this. But I asked him I knew his passion was AI, and what I did then is I asked him to help me organize a hackathon in AI. This was the first hackathon, and the theme of that hackathon was mental health. That took place in London in 2017. That was the very first hackathon with teenagers that I ran, and he organized it and spoke in it and found all the mentors and everyone. And that kept his mind occupied. And then since then, he ended up inspiring others and teaching others how to code and how to do very complicated machine learning models. He was able to teach girls aged 9 and 10 what AI is, and and help teach them how to build a model using just Excel sheet. So there is something very special about that boy. So without him, I definitely would not be doing any of the AI stuff. But I could see that he was really passionate, and I could see a lot of the other teenagers that came to that event were fascinated by those technologies. And so since then, I've launched it officially at the United Nations in May 2018, and it has taken off to an extent that I didn't really expect it to. Suddenly, from questions like, oh, do you teach kids how to code? You must be just like a coding club. People have realized that we teach kids how to think and how to problem solve and how to use technology for good. So we take on real problems like climate change, like mental health, like health and well-being, diversity, and we give them data sets, non-biased, I hope, to really challenge them and show them that the world is their oyster, and that if they can understand how the world of technology works and how to create technology, then the future is really bright for them. And so to me, if we could instill into them those values, you know, for me, technology embodies the values of the people who build it. So if we have the people that we nurture from a very young age, and we show these young people that they can do it, and that they should be addressing the real problems, and that there are many problems to solve, then there is hope, in my opinion. And so there are many, many teenage activists these days. I think the latest one, Greta Thunberg, has just really blown everyone away by the amount of people that she managed to draw to herself, and lots of other teenagers who are really leading their way. And these are the young people that we are trying to create. And there are many of them in the UK already. So I know I only have 5 minutes. I didn't realize I speak so much, and and I have stories to tell. So let me show you how we do it. So not great sound, apologies for that. So what you're seeing here is a 2-week accelerator program. It's a Teens and AI Accelerator, the only one in the UK and in Europe. We have about 25 or 30 speakers to inspire teenagers, about 25 teenagers that go through this program every year. So we're running the 4th one this year, which is very exciting. And for the past 2 years, we've been only focusing on AI. And the kind of stuff we cover is design thinking, ethics, machine learning technologies, pitching, communication. So lots of different skills. So I am going to pause here because I have Laila here, who I would really love you to meet before I get off the stage. And so I wanted to end, perhaps, because I know there is another speaker after me, by just hopefully would have inspired you by the examples that I've been able to tell. And the real example is actually Laila, who's with me. But if you do get a chance, do check out our work, because we have the most incredible teenagers who do the most incredible stuff like this, you know, and they are the ones who will be shaping the world. And we are already doing work in New York, San Francisco, Seattle, and there will be the very first hackathon we're going to run in Africa, in Kenya, so it's something I'm really excited about. And this hopefully will offer us a route to market into Africa, because we really are all about improving diversity so that it's boys and girls, but also black and white and all sorts of backgrounds. And we're doing this gradually, and the scale that we see is we really do want to connect young people through the passion for technology, particularly AI, and show them that they can really change the world. So, Laila? Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Laila and I'm one of the teens that is affiliated with Teens in AI. So a little bit about myself. I'm 18, so I'm just at the end of my Teens in AI journey, which is really sad. But I've come out of doing my A-levels and I never thought that I could see myself in computer science, and I never thought that I could see myself changing the world. And I've been affiliated with Teens in AI now for just over a year, and I attended their first accelerator after hearing about it through a friend. And honestly, I've never been given so much free rein ever. They literally gave me one task to do, which was to change the world, and we came up with so many ideas, and there was so much creativity, and I met with so many amazing programmers and design thinkers. And I never thought that that was important about changing the world. I thought it was just about programming and coding, which is what I was interested in. But I met so many amazing people and networked with so many professional industry game changers that I thought, why not pursue this further? So I definitely think that Teens in AI is one of the reasons why I'm majoring in computer science at university, and I'm so excited to see where this company goes and how far they're gonna reach and how many people they're going to inspire. So thank you all.